Hello. Today we'll be telling you about the globalization of Hong Kong.
Hi, my name is Yihan Shi. I'm going to introduce a part of the colonized economy. And let's look at the first questions. What is the colonizers of the colonized country? The answer is the Hong Kong is definitely the classic case of the colonized territory. It was seized by the Britain during the First Opium War until the July 1997. Hong Kong was finally ending its period as a colony. And you can see there's a pictures which was taken at the handover to Hong Kong in July the 1st, 1997, and which means the Britain's 1.5 century of colony rules over Hong Kong has come to an end. And how did that factor into their capacity to participate in globalized economy? Even though the colonial history of the Hong Kong is humiliating for the people of Hong Kong, but it does provide positive contributions to the overall development of Hong Kong. Firstly, the Hong Kong government will create a stable and transparent regulatory environment for trade, and we have to mention about the Hong Kong dollar pact. And this meant the Hong Kong dollar will pack with the US dollar, which is the world currency for trade. And the linked exchange system will automatically self-correct to maintain the stability of the Hong Kong dollar exchange rate. And secondly, the free trade policies, which will encourage foreign investments. And it also means that they will allow the free import and export for all goods without tariffs and restrictions. Okay, let's move on to the third questions. Is this country the giver or the receiver in the global development and foreign aid system? Hong Kong is definitely playing the role of a giver. And firstly, we have to mention about the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. It promotes trade and investment with other countries. You can see there's a slogan saying that Hong Kong made the business. And secondly, the established Hong Kong Disaster Relief Fund, we were short at the DRF. It's aimed to providing the assistance providing assistance and technical expertise to developing countries. And you can see the graphs which showing the expenditure of the DRF through 1996 to 2018. And you can also see there's two pics of the expenditures, and one is at 2008, another is at 2010. I think it's supposed to be spent for supporting the two major earthquakes happened in China in those periods. One it happened in Yushu and another it happened in Wenchuan. And let's move on to the last questions. How has that affected capacity to be competitive in a global economy? Um, Hong Kong's efforts in international aid have the positive impact on its economy developments. By enhancing its international reputations, the Hong Kong will have the greater international trust, and it will expand its markets. It will um, establish the links with a wider range of the countries and regions, and also it will enhance the social responsibilities and it will help to enhance the sense of the international perspective of all of the Hong Kong citizens. And all of the three points will both help on the long-term stable development of the Hong Kong.
Hong Kong is closely related to wars and was even considered a country born out of war. After the First Opium War in 1840 to 1842, Hong Kong was ceded to Britain permanently. According to the Nanjing Treaty signed between Qing China and Britain in 1842, the Second Convention of Peking in 1898 further defined Hong Kong's borders by leasing the new territories and outlanding lands to Britain for 99 years. In addition, negotiations between Britain and China in 1898 resulted in Hong Kong being designated as a British defense port of 99 years, from July 1st, 1898 to June 30, 1997. With the opening of the Guangzhou-Hong Kong Railway in 1905, Hong Kong started to develop as a hub for merchants to gather goods for overseas trade. By 1939, the population had grown to 1.6 million from approximately 120,000 in 1861. With the growth of the harbor factories and the influx of laborers and the poor, nationalism and communism ideologies began to permeate, leading to several upheavals. Japan occupied Hong Kong on December 25th, 1941, and the Republic of China liberated it in July 45. Still, in October 1949, the Communist Party came into power, creating military tensions that led to the rapid withdrawal of British forces. However, in January 1950, Britain recognized China, and in 1963, China declared that the Hong Kong and Macau issue shall be maintained until a peaceful solution is reached. In 1966, Kowloon riots and the 1967 leftist riots were suppressed without Chinese intervention. In addition, in 1972, Britain closed its embassy in Taiwan and established diplomatic relations with China to guarantee political stability in Hong Kong. Following the Chinese Civil War, Hong Kong was returned to China on July 1st, 1997. Hong Kong became a special administrative region with a high degree of autonomy, except for foreign affairs and defense, for 50 years until June 30th, 2047. On December 19th, 1984, Britain and China signed the Sino-British Joint Declaration to settle the 155 years of colonial history and returned Hong Kong to China. Hong Kong thus became the world's first one country, two system political structure. Due to its complex history, Hong Kong serves as a gateway for China's cooperation with the West. Hong Kong grew without much pressure until the Cold War system from the time autonomy was recognized, so it emerged as a modern brokerage trading country.
Hello, my name is Winter King, and I'm going to be talking about global politics in Hong Kong. When Hong Kong was no longer controlled by the British government, China agreed to have a one country, two systems political model. This allowed Hong Kong to have their own personal system separate from mainland China. However, China is increasingly restricting their freedoms. This includes new interpretations of Hong Kong's basic law that requires those that have legal authority to swear allegiance to Hong Kong as a part of China and not in its own separate entity, or else they cannot be in office. China is extremely influential in this realm, as their capital has loyalists placed within Hong Kong's political sphere. China has also imposed a national security law, in which actions that align with disagreement of the Chinese government are punishable. The law also includes intentionally vague descriptions of terrorism and illegal cooperation with foreign nations. They also created an enforcement team for this purpose and placed the team in Hong Kong. This would make Hong Kong relatively weak, as they cannot exercise their full promised rights. They do not have the full capacity to promote their global economic interests, as they're being controlled in some aspects by China. However, China allows Hong Kong to control their own trade and tourism with other countries. Financially, Hong Kong is a hub for growth and activity, and many companies have international offices in Hong Kong due to the proximity to China and its more capitalistic nature. However, due to the national security law, these companies may cut ties with Hong Kong due to the fear of unintentionally violating these vague laws. This makes Hong Kong's economic interests at risk of jeopardization due to China's actions. Overall, this would make Hong Kong strong in the financial sector for the time being, but weak in terms of being able to fully exercise their own rights and interests. They are stifled by China's strict policies relating to discussion any dissent to their system.
Hong Kong's cultural identity has gradually been formed in the consistent pursuit for an original local culture with values and norms that its own people share, amidst its complex historical background of being British colony and political pressure from mainland China. It does stand out with its core values of freedom, rights, and equality. Just as shown in the case where more than 500,000 people gathered for a public demonstration in the early 2000s, when the Hong Kong government proposed a legislation that has strong implications against the freedom of the local people in terms of expressing free opinions about the Chinese authorities. Hong Kong also developed capitalism as one of the major components of the culture, with a legacy of Western influence and great degree of globalism. Based on such cultural identities, Hong Kong has come up with its own unique culture, a mixture of East and West. Two completely different cultures from East and West were combined in a subtle way, which makes Hong Kong culture even more attractive. While Hong Kong has been an importer of culture in its early days, founded along with traditional Han Cantonese culture of southeastern China and being colonized by British power, it now has become one of the main exporters of culture in the globalized world. Hong Kong did become a major stage of global culture. Not to mention that Hong Kong once had the third largest film industry in the world, behind Bollywood and Hollywood at its very peak. Hong Kong has also been emerging as one of the world's largest art trading hubs based on its solid cultural and commercial foundations. As such, Hong Kong, with its extraordinary cultural identities and diverse cultures as a result of historical backgrounds, is not a mere importer of culture anymore, rather a major exporter in the globalized world.
Hi, my name is Amy Huang, and I'm going to go over Hong Kong's migration and workforce. Okay, so Hong Kong has a complex history in regarding it to its migration profile. But if we continue to examine the history, we notice that there is more outflow to inflow of the population. So this would make Hong Kong more of the sender of immigration rather than receiver of immigration. If we look at data, we notice that 113 and 200 people departed away from Hong Kong in just a span of 12 months or even longer in the year 2021. When we look at census, we notice that there is a 1.6% drop in the population in mid-2020 to mid-2021. There was also another addition of 89,200 residents departing. So what are the causes for people leaving? Again, it is once again complex, but some factors that we can take account are political instability with Hong Kong, civil liberties, and recently the pandemic. I believe it is important to note that the balance between emigration and immigration will continue to shift over time. Okay, the issue with brain drain. The concern of brain drain continues to pose a problem with Hong Kong. When brain drain occurs, there's going to be a loss of highly educated and talented individuals leaving, migrating to another country. Recently, Hong Kong has been struggling in the tech section. It's often due to government's failure to produce a stable plan and the ability to attract these talented individuals. Alongside with that, Hong Kong is also currently being confronted with an immense amount of immigration, which adding to the aging population would cause the working population to decline at a higher rate. And finally, how does Hong Kong participate in globalization? Mainly through migrant domestic workers. They contribute greatly to the economy. Female employed workforce was able to add 12.6 billion profit to their economy, and 385,000 workers who are migrant workers were able to make 10% of the Hong Kong's population.
Hi, my name is Charles Rolfe, and I will be starting the analysis on human rights in Hong Kong. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states the most basic and necessary human rights for all countries to acknowledge and accept. Any rights not stated in the Universal Declaration are left to each individual country to decide under their own accords. Hong Kong has created some seemingly fair human rights policies. When we look at workers' rights, it's important to acknowledge Hong Kong's global stance. They are ranked top 10 for exporting and importing. They are ranked third in the world for business. They are ranked at the 40th highest GDP out of 216 countries. All these rankings are very impressive, and they reflect how hardworking the people of Hong Kong are. But how are these workers treated? Workers' rights include a required rest day once every 7 days. Unfortunately, this right is treated merely as a suggestion instead of enforced law. Beyond the surface level, we see that workers' rights are constantly being violated. A study of 1,000 workers in Hong Kong shows that they work an average of 71.4 hours per week. Even if you were to take your 1 day a week rest day, that still means that you're working on average 12 hours per day, which is ridiculous. And workers' rights are clearly being violated here, but employers continue to get away with it. Hong Kong's 2-week rule also allows for employers to violate workers' rights. The 2-week rule requires migrant domestic workers to leave the city within 2 weeks of being unemployed. This rule pressures workers to stay in their current jobs, no matter how bad the conditions are or how many of their rights are being violated. This creates fear among workers, a fear to seek legal protection, because, after all, the same government that they desire protection from is the same government that enforces this 2-week rule. In this first picture, it was used by the New York Times in 2016 in an article discussing domestic workers dying on the job. In the photo, people are protesting their health to be acknowledged by the Hong Kong government. They're demanding for safe working conditions and reasonable work hours. In the second photo, it is another protest for human rights that happened in 2020 over the National Security Law. The National Security Law was created by China in response to pro-democracy protests, and it allows authorities to arrest protesters for disagreeing with China's government, even if they are participating in peaceful protests. This law is authoritarian and limits citizens' freedom of speech in Hong Kong.
Hi, my name is Itiana Huth, and I am going to continue talking about human rights. So the way the government protects other human rights is similar to the way that they protect workers' rights, which basically means that they have correct policies, but they don't necessarily execute them well. Prosperity in a globalized world for Hong Kong. Politically, the government has proven that they are not truly there for their people. They have normalized allowing human rights to be violated so long as it economically benefits Hong Kong. By prioritizing economic standing over human rights, this creates political uncertainty and will affect the way the city prospers over time. Social movements like protests, which one is pictured right here, are occurring due to political uncertainty. As protesters accumulate in size, Hong Kong will only be able to prosper so much. Hong Kong will still be in a position where they will not be able to prosper if they continue to violate human rights. They will have to implement human rights better and learn how to prosper that way. Another issue is wealth distribution and how persistent of an issue that is. 25% of youths in Hong Kong grow up in poverty. And based on the way that Hong Kong is flourishing economically, this percentage seems too high to believe. This means that at least 25% of youths bear witness to their parents or guardians working hard. They bear witness to their parents' workers' rights being violated. And then they bear witness to Hong Kong's prosperity while they live in conditions that contradict such prosperity. Right now, Hong Kong is a top competitor in today's globalized world, but that is all due to the way that human rights have been violated there. Hong Kong and the development ladder. Hong Kong is similar to other countries in regards to things like legal protection, land rights, and freedom to start a business. For example, the way those three things are here in the US are pretty similar to the way that they are supposed to be in Hong Kong. What's different about Hong Kong, though, is the safety that the people feel they have to access these things. So this link right here is going to take us to the Human Rights Initiative measurement. Oh, let's go here. And over here, we could see that it says that Hong Kong's safety from the state score is a 6.5 out of 10, and how that suggests a significant number of people are not safe from one or more of the following. One of those things is arbitrary arrest. And when we scroll down, we see this chart that shows who's most likely to have that right be violated, the right to freedom from arbitrary arrest. And in the top three, we see that human rights advocates are up there. Human rights advocates are top three in risk of having their right to freedom from arbitrary arrest violated. And this is all due to all sorts of factors that the Hong Kong government has been implementing. And one of those things is like the national security law.
This is Desiree Enriquez, Technology in Hong Kong. In the 1940s, fleeing immigrants from China had brought cheap labor for Hong Kong, which improved the economy of the city and led to the more development of electronics, toys, tech companies, etc. And tech companies began to form and build ideas on how to improve Hong Kong. And one example of that would be Victor Lee, who is the CEO of Rice Robotics. that builds a robot to automatically deliver food to people in quarantine hotels and disinfect shopping malls. He built this robot during the pandemic, which he was then able to protect lots of people from getting sick from COVID. This is a picture of one of the disinfection robots built by Rice Robotics. This is a video of Victor Lee giving an overview of one of the robots in action.
During COVID, we have a lot of requests and demand from our clients to have such a product. And that's one of the great things about this field. You always find new ways to, do things and achieve things.
Unfortunately, since lots of people are leaving Hong Kong, there is a decrease of young and skillful people. The government is planning to invest lots of money in promoting the technology industry and investing in universities to hopefully attract more people to Hong Kong and to stay in Hong Kong. If they can do this, then it can allow them to be more competitive in the globalized world.
Hello, my name is Sean Mintek O, and I will be presenting Globalization Index from Position in the World. First, Globalization Index shows economic flows, life expectancy, technology improvement, and global connectedness. Every index uses different factors, so it is useful to see various indexes instead of just one. In this presentation, I'll be introducing 3 indexes: HDI, KOF, and DHL index. HDI, which means Human Development Index, measures life in that country, GDP, trade frequency, technology advancement, and etc. There are many factors that HDI measures, so it is one of the most powerful sources in Globalization Index. According to HDI Index, Hong Kong is considered very high, which is 4th among 190 countries in 2023. So this means Hong Kong has ranked top in human development. Secondly, in KOF Index, Hong Kong is ranked 65th among 200 countries overall. Hong Kong doesn't score the top in KOF index compared to HDI, but still, it is decent score. Lastly, in DHL Index, they measure connectedness such as trade, capital, information, and people. Hong Kong ranked 31st among 171 countries in 2022. Their index score decreased compared to 2019, but they're still ranked 4th in depth, which means the size of international flow is very high. As you can see from 3 different indexes, Hong Kong is highly ranked in Globalization Index, which means they are globally open and have high economic flows compared to other countries. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly, and I'm going to be talking about Hong Kong's position in the world. Their main assets to compete globally consist of a successful stock market and foreign exchange market, large banking center in terms of external financial transactions, and a large trading entity as their production costs are low. And they also privately invest. Okay, it's okay. Hi, my name is Kelly, and I'm going to be talking about Hong Kong's position in the world. Their main assets to compete globally are a large banking center in terms of external financial transactions, trading entities as their production costs are low, which is how most of the money is made through international private investments and exports. They also have a successful stock market and foreign exchange market. In 1997, Hong Kong's GDP grew to the equivalent of $155 billion with per capita of $24,000 and growing. Their total trade was worth over $440 billion and their bank assets were worth over $1 trillion. This makes them one of the most prosperous economies, evidenced by the high GDP, which is the monetary value of final goods and services sold. Their primary natural resources are like minerals, including lead, tungsten, iron. They also have rivers, a lot of rivers and ports, and since they're surrounded by water, which they use for fishing, and they have like a substantially large like labor force. Their labor force participation rate is approximately 58% as of February 2023, and its size in 2019 to 2022 is 3.67 to 3.68 million, and projected to decline. Hong Kong's utilization of flexible production and their advancement in technology with respect to artificial intelligence and robotics has helped increase the production of goods as well as the sizable value of the workforce. Their manufacturing is very labor intensive. They primarily make textile and clothing, and it takes up about 1/3 of their manufacturing industry, which is actually being overshadowed by the increasing costs and of production and the service sector. That's all I have. Thank you.